The alien ship drifted through space like a dying flower. Its crystal hull caught the light from distant stars and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Inside the ship, Ambassador Kethver pressed his six-fingered hands against the viewing port and stared at the blue-green world ahead, Earth, the Death World. Kethver had read the reports about this planet. The gravity was too strong. The atmosphere was poison to most species. Storms could destroy cities. The ground shook without warning. Fires burned forests to ash. Ice covered the land for months at a time. Tiny invisible creatures could kill you in days, but the worst part was not the planet. It was what lived on it. Humans. The ship's engines hummed as they approached the orbital station. Cuthver's crystal-like skin turned pale yellow with fear. His people, the Zilani, had never known war. They grew food in floating gardens. They made art from living crystal. They sang to their children under 3 moons. Violence was something they read about in old history books. But now the Vorthik were coming. The swarm had already taken 6 worlds. Soon they would reach the heart of Zilani space. Soon his people would be nothing but food. The docking bay doors opened with a hiss. Kethver walked down the ramp on shaking legs. The human station smelled of metal and oil and something else he could not name. Fear, maybe. Or death. A human waited for him. The creature was shorter than Kethver, but built like a weapon. Thick muscles covered its frame. Scars marked its face and hands. Its eyes were the color of winter storms. "I am Captain Jake Morrison," the human said. Its voice was rough like grinding stone. "Welcome to Terra Station." Kethver bowed in the way of his people. "I am Ambassador Kethver of the Zilani Confederation. I come seeking aid." Morrison's face did not change. "Follow me." They walked through corridors filled with humans. Kethver tried not to stare, but he could not help himself. These creatures moved like predators. Even the smallest ones carried weapons. Their children played games of war. Their art showed battles and conquest. The meeting room was simple and cold. No beauty, no decoration. Just a table and chairs and screens showing star maps. Admiral Lisa. Carter sat at the head of the table. She was older than Morrison, but no less dangerous. Her gray hair was pulled back tight. Her uniform was covered in marks of rank and battle. "Sit," she said. "Tell us about the Vorthik." Kethver's hands shook as he activated his data pad. Images filled the screens. Chitinous creatures with too many legs and teeth like knives. Ships that looked like giant insects. Worlds stripped bare of all life. "They came from the outer rim 3 years ago," Kethver said. "We thought they were just another species seeking trade. We sent ambassadors. They sent back pieces." Morrison leaned forward. "How many ships?" "Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They breed their vessels like animals. Each one carries millions of warriors. Weapons? Acid that eats through any material. Biological weapons that turn living things into food. They do not fight wars. They harvest." Carter studied the images with cold eyes. "What do you want from us?" Kethver's voice broke. "Help, please. We have tried everything. Our ships are too slow. Our weapons too weak. We are gardeners, not warriors. In 6 months, they will reach our core worlds. 20 billion souls will die. And what do you offer in return?" The ambassador's skin shifted to deep blue. Hope mixed with desperation. "Everything. Our FTL drives are 10 times faster than yours. Our medical technology can extend life by centuries. Our energy systems could power your world for 1,000 years. Take it all. Just save my people." The room fell silent. The humans looked at each other with expressions Kethver could not read. Finally, Carter spoke. "We need to discuss this. Wait outside." Kethver stood on trembling legs and left the room. In the corridor, he pressed his back against the wall and tried to breathe. Through the thick metal, he could hear voices. Human. Voices speaking in their harsh language. Time crawled by. An hour. 2 hours. Kethver watched human children play in a nearby area. Even their games were violent. They pretended to fight monsters. They celebrated when they won. They laughed when their enemies died. What kind of people was he asking for help? The door opened. Morrison stepped out. His face showed nothing. "We'll do it," he said. Relief flooded through Kethver like cool water. His skin turned bright gold. With joy. "Thank you. Oh, thank you. How many ships can you send? A dozen? 20? Morrison's mouth curved upward in what humans called a smile. It was not a pleasant expression. The entire Third Fleet, 57 warships, 20,000 soldiers. We leave tomorrow. Kethver stared. The entire fleet? But surely you cannot. Spare so many ships. What if you are attacked while they are gone? By who? Morrison asked. Everyone else in the galaxy thinks we're monsters. They leave us alone. But the cost, the risk. Why would you help us so much? Morrison's smile grew wider, because we're very good at killing things. And the Vorthek sound like they need killing. That night, Kethver stood in his quarters and watched the human fleet prepare for war. The ships were ugly things made of steel and anger. Their hulls bristled with weapons. Their engines burned like tiny stars. He could see human soldiers training. On the observation decks, they moved with deadly grace, like dancers of death. The Zilani had made art of war in their ancient past. But it was beautiful war, full of honor and ceremony. What he saw now was something else. Something that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. But his people would live. That was what mattered. On the main deck, Admiral Carter addressed her captains. The Vorthek have been having their way with peaceful species for too long. Time to show them what happens when they pick a fight with Earth. The captains cheered. The sound echoed through the station like thunder. Kethver closed his eyes and prayed to the crystal gods of his people. He prayed for victory. He prayed for salvation. He prayed that the cure would not be worse than the disease. But deep in his heart, watching the humans prepare for war with such terrible joy, he already knew the answer. The fleet departed at dawn, leaving trails of fire across the stars. Kethver watched them go and wondered what he had just unleashed upon the galaxy. The alarms screamed through the crystal towers of Serenity Prime. Kethver stood on the observation deck of the evacuation center and watched his worst nightmare come true. Black shapes moved between the stars like hungry insects. The Vorthek swarm had arrived. How long until the human fleet gets here? Asked Dr. Yeltar, her crystal skin flashing red with panic. Kethver checked his communication device. 2 hours, maybe less. On the planet below, millions of Zilani fled their beautiful cities. Their transparent ships lifted off like soap bubbles, fragile and slow. The crystal gardens that had taken centuries to grow would be ash by morning. First Vorthek bioship entered the atmosphere. It looked like a giant beetle made of living metal and bone. Acid dripped from its weapons as it dove toward the largest city. The screams of dying Zilani reached even the orbital station. There, Dr. Yeltar pointed with a shaking hand. Ships coming from the outer system. Kethver felt his heart skip. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like wolves entering a sheep pen. Their ships were nothing like the graceful Zilani vessels or even the ugly Vorthek bioforms. They were wedges of black metal covered in gun ports and missile tubes. They moved with purpose that made Kethver's skin crawl. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Zilani Station, this is Terran Fleet Command. We're taking over. Get your ships out of the combat zone. But our people are still down there, Kethver protested. Then we better work fast. The human battlecruiser Vengeance led the charge. Commander Rick Hayes stood on its bridge and studied the enemy with cold eyes. The Vorthek had numbers, but Numbers meant nothing to humans who had learned to fight on a world that tried to kill them every day. "Target the big one," Hayes ordered. "Full spread of nuclear missiles. Sir, there are Zilani civilians in the area. The Vorthik will kill them anyway. Fire." 20 missiles streaked toward the largest bioship. The creature tried to dodge, but human weapons were built for killing things that moved fast. The explosions lit up the sky like new suns. The bioship screamed as it died, a sound that made every Zilani on the station cover their ears. But more were coming. Hundreds of them. Lieutenant Amy Foster sat in her fighter cockpit and watched the swarm approach. She was 22 years old and had grown up in the ruins of old Chicago. Her grandmother used to tell stories about the resource wars when humans fought each other for water and food. Amy learned early that sometimes you had to be willing to die to protect what mattered. "Gold Squadron, form up on me," she said into her radio. "We're going in." Her fighter was a dart of metal and fury. It carried enough firepower to level a city block. But Amy was not thinking about weapons. She was thinking about her little brother, back on Earth, and how he would never see another sunrise if humanity lost this fight. The Vorthik biofighters swarmed toward the human ships like angry wasps. Their acid weapons could melt through any armor. Their living hulls could heal damage. In seconds, they had conquered 100 worlds with these advantages. They had never fought humans before. Amy's fighter punched through the swarm like a bullet through paper. Her guns spat death in controlled bursts. Each shot was aimed with deadly precision. Behind her, the rest of Gold Squadron followed, their weapons painting the void with fire. But it was not enough. For every biofighter they killed, 2 more took its place. Amy watched her fuel gauge drop toward empty. Her ammunition counter blinked red. Around her, human fighters were starting to die. "Foster," Hayes' voice came through the radio. "We need that swarm broken up. Can you do it?" Amy looked at the massive bioship spawning more fighters from its belly. She looked at her fuel gauge. She looked at the fusion charge mounted under her fighter's nose. "Copy that command." Going in, Dr. Yeltar watched in horror as the small human fighter dove toward certain death. "What is that pilot doing?" Kethver understood. His people had read the human military files. "She's going to ram the bioship, but she will die." "Yes." Amy Foster's fighter hit the bioship's spawning chamber at 800 meters per second. The fusion charge detonated half a second later. The explosion tore the creature apart from the inside, ending the lives of thousands of Vorthik warriors in an instant of nuclear fire. It also ended Amy's life. But she had bought the fleet the time it needed. The space battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships fought with a brutality that shocked even the Vorthik. When bioships tried to ram human vessels, the humans rammed back harder. When the aliens used acid weapons, the humans answered with nuclear fire. When the Vorthik tried to retreat, the humans hunted them down like animals. But the real horror began when the fighting moved to the ground. Sergeant Danny Rodriguez had fought in the Amazon Wars and the Siberian conflict. He had killed his first man at 16 and his 100th at 20. War was his profession, and he was very good at it. His platoon landed in what used to be Crystal Park, the most beautiful place on Serenity Prime. Now it was a wasteland of broken towers and burning trees. Vorthak warriors scuttled through the ruins like giant spiders, hunting for Zilani civilians to harvest. Contact Front called Corporal Beth Murphy. She was 19 and had grown up in the Detroit Free Zone. Her parents had died in a gang war. When she was 12, the Vorthik reminded her of the scavengers who had picked through the ruins of her childhood. Danny raised his assault rifle and put 3 rounds through the nearest warrior's head. The creature dropped like a puppet with cut strings. "Form up. We sweep and clear every building." The Vorthik had expected easy prey. Instead, they found predators who fought with tactics learned in the hell of Earth's endless wars. The humans did not just fight the aliens, They hunted them. They used their own hive mind against them, sending false signals that drew entire swarms into ambushes. Private Jake Coleman threw a grenade into a nest of Vorthek eggs. The explosion killed hundreds of unborn warriors. On Earth, such an act would be called necessary. Here, it was genocide made personal. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, Serenity Prime was free. The crystal cities were broken, but they could be rebuilt. The Zalani were alive, and that was what mattered. But Kethver stood among the wreckage and felt no joy. The ground was covered with Vorthek corpses. Thousands of them. The humans had not just defeated the swarm. They had slaughtered it with methodical efficiency. Captain Morrison walked through the killing field with the casual stride of a man who had seen worse. Much worse. Your people are safe, he told Kethver. At what cost? Morrison looked at the dead aliens and shrugged. They started it. We finished it. As the human fleet regrouped for the next battle, word spread across the galaxy. The Vorthek swarm had been stopped. The Deathworlders had shown their true nature. And every civilized species in the galaxy suddenly understood why Earth was avoided by all intelligent life. The humans were not just warriors. They were something far more dangerous. They were human. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. The Vorthek swarm, unstoppable for 300 years, had been defeated. Not just defeated, crushed. The recordings from Serenity Prime showed scenes that made civilized species sick too. Their stomachs, humans fighting like demons. Humans killing without mercy. Humans winning. In the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Station, representatives from 47 species watched the battle footage in stunned silence. The elegant Altarians covered their eyes with silk wings. The peaceful Centauri delegation left the room entirely. Only the warlike Krogan seemed impressed, and even they looked uncomfortable. "This is what we have unleashed," whispered Council Leader Veltar. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. "We thought the Vorthek were monsters." Meanwhile, Colonel Ben Parker stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Apocalypse and studied star charts of Vorthek space. Parker had fought in more wars than most humans lived years. He had seen cities burn and planets die. But what he planned next would make those battles look like children's games. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kate Sullivan. She was built like a weapon and twice as deadly. Her unit specialized in boarding actions against enemy ships. "We've identified their main supply depot, Hive World Alpha 7. Parker nodded. "Population? Estimated 50 billion Vorthek. It's their primary breeding center. Then we wipe it out." Dr. Nell Wright looked up from her research station. She had spent the last month studying captured Vorthek technology, learning how their bioships worked. What she had discovered would change the war forever. "Colonel, I've finished the analysis. Their ships are not just alive, they're connected. Every vessel shares information through quantum-linked neural networks." "English, Doctor. If we can capture one ship intact, we can hack into their entire fleet. Turn their own biology against them." Parker's smile was cold as winter on Mars. "Do it." The assault on Hiveworld Alpha 7 began 3 days later. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a hammer blow. 57 warships against a planet defended by thousands of bio-vessels. The odds should have been impossible, but humans had learned to make the impossible look easy. Sergeant Kate Sullivan led the boarding party onto the Vorthek command ship. Her team moved through the living corridors like ghosts of death. The bio-ships' walls pulsed with alien heartbeats. Acid dripped from the ceiling. The air was thick with spores that could kill most species in minutes. To humans who had breathed the poisoned air of post-war Earth, it was just another day at the office. "Charges set," reported Corporal Tim Brooks. He had grown up in the Australian wastes where the radiation still glowed green 50 years after the Melbourne incident. Alien toxins were nothing new to him. "Wait," Kate ordered. She watched Dr. Wright connect her devices to the ship's neural center. The bioship screamed as human technology invaded its brain. "Got it," Wright said. "We're in their network." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries. Every Vorthik ship in the system suddenly turned on its neighbors. Friend became foe in an instant of electronic treachery. The aliens' greatest strength, their hive mind unity, became their fatal weakness. But that was just the beginning. Admiral Carter arrived with reinforcements 2 weeks later. Her flagship was the newest and most terrible vessel in the human fleet. The apocalypse was 3 kilometers of weaponized hatred. Its hull was black as space itself. Its guns could shatter moons. "Status report," Carter demanded as she stepped onto the bridge. Colonel Parker handed her a datapad. 18 Vorthik worlds conquered. 7 more under siege. Total enemy casualties estimated at 200 billion. Carter studied the numbers without emotion. She had learned to kill on the streets of Neo-Tokyo during the corporate wars. Mathematics of death were just another tool to her. Not enough. "They're still breeding faster than we can kill them." Dr. Wright stepped forward. Her face was pale but determined. "I have a solution. We've reverse-engineered their biotechnology. We can create hybrid ships that combine human weapons with Vorthik biology." "How long?" 6 months for the first prototype. A year for mass production. You have 3 months. The first hybrid ship rolled out of the orbital shipyards above Mars, exactly 90 days later. It looked like something from a nightmare. Heth. Machine, half-living creature. Its hull breathed. Its weapons grew instead of being manufactured. When it was damaged, it healed itself. Commander Pete Johnson took the ship on its first test run. He had commanded destroyers in the asteroid wars and carriers in the Jupiter campaign. But nothing had prepared him for a vessel that was partially alive. "Weapons status," he ordered. "Growing," reported his gunner. "The biocannons are reaching maturity. Acid production at optimal levels. Target that asteroid. Full spread." The hybrid ship's weapons fired streams of acid that ate through solid rock like water through sugar. The asteroid simply ceased to exist. "My God," whispered Johnson's second in command. "What have we created?" But God was not answering human prayers anymore. The hybrid ships reproduced themselves in orbital nurseries above conquered Vorthak worlds. Soon there were dozens of them. Then hundreds. Each one hungrier and more deadly than the last. The war turned into a massacre. Vorthik fleets that had conquered dozens of civilizations vanished without a trace. Entire hive worlds went silent. The galaxy's greatest predators became prey in their own hunting grounds. Ambassador Kethver watched the reports from his quarters on Terra Station. His crystal skin had turned gray with horror. The numbers were beyond comprehension. Trillions of Vorthik dead. Hundreds of worlds sterilized. Star systems left empty except for drifting debris and the smell of death. "This is not war," he told Captain Morrison during one of their meetings. "This is extinction." Morrison looked at him with those cold human eyes. "You asked us to save your people. We're saving them. By destroying an entire species. If that's what it takes." Kethver pressed his hands against the viewing port and stared out at the hybrid ships growing in their orbital pods. They pulsed with alien life and human cruelty, beautiful and terrible. Perfect killing machines born from 2 species that should never have met. "What have we done?" He whispered Dot in the depths of space. The last free Vorthek hive queen felt her children dying across 1,000 worlds. Her species had conquered galaxies. They had devoured civilizations. They had been the ultimate predators, but they had never met humans before. The queen sent out a final message to any of her kind who might still be alive. 3 words in the ancient Vorthek tongue. "Run. Hide. Pray." Then she turned her Bio shipped toward the edge of the galaxy and fled into the darkness. Between stars, carrying the last hope of her species away from the Deathworlders who had brought devastation to the cosmos. The last Vorthek hive world died on a Tuesday. Commander Pete Johnson watched from his hybrid ship as the planet's surface cracked and burned. 3 days of orbital bombardment had turned a world that once housed 50 billion creatures into a sphere of cooling glass. The final bioship defenders floated dead in space, their living hulls split open like rotten fruit. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Amy Davis. She was 24 and had never known a galaxy without war. "Sensors show no remaining life signs. The hive is silent." Johnson nodded. After 2 years of fighting, the Vorthek swarm was finished. The galaxy's greatest threat had been wiped from existence with the methodical precision that humans brought to everything they did. "Send the report to Admiral Carter. Tell her it's over." But was it really over? Johnson stared at the dead world and wondered what they had become. The hybrid ships around him pulsed with stolen alien life. Human crews worked alongside creatures they had created from enemy flesh and human technology. They had won the war by becoming something new. Something terrible. On Earth, the victory celebrations lasted for 3 days. Admiral Lisa Carter stood before the Global Defense Council and accepted humanity's highest honors. The reporters called her a hero. The politicians made speeches about human courage and determination. But late at night, alone in her quarters, Carter stared at casualty reports that the public would never see. Not human casualties. Those had been surprisingly light. Less than 50,000 dead in a war that had lasted 2 years. The other numbers were harder to look at. Vorthek casualties, estimated 4 trillion. Worlds sterilized, 237. Entire star systems left empty, 41. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Captain Morrison entered without waiting for permission. His face looked older than his years, marked by the weight of what they had done. "The Zilani want to hold a ceremony," he said. "To thank us for saving them." Carter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Thank us for what? Turning their galaxy into a graveyard? We did what we had to do." Did we? Or did we do what we wanted to do? Morrison sat down across from her. They had known each other for 20 years, had fought in a dozen human wars together, but this war had changed something in both of them. "The Vorthek would have killed them all," he said quietly. "Every last Zilani, every other peaceful species in the galaxy. We stopped the genocide by committing one ourselves." In the crystal cities of the Zilani homeworld, Ambassador Kethver prepared for the victory ceremony with a heavy heart. His people were safe. The threat that had haunted their dreams for 3 years was gone forever. But the price of that safety weighed on his soul like a stone. The ceremony took place in the Grand Crystal Cathedral, a building that had stood for 1,000 years. Representatives from dozens of species came to honor their human saviors. But Kethver noticed how they looked at the human delegation, not with gratitude, with fear. Admiral Carter spoke to the assembled crowd in simple words that carried across the galaxy on every news channel. "The Vorthek swarm threatened all life in this galaxy," she said. "They had to be stopped. We stopped them. That is what humans do. We protect what matters no matter the cost." The applause was polite but nervous. Everyone understood the real message. Humans had shown what they were capable of when they decided something needed to die. The question now was, what would they decide needed to die next? After the ceremony, Kethver found himself alone with Carter in the cathedral's memorial garden. The crystal trees sang in harmony with the evening wind, a sound of perfect peace that seemed to mock what they had all become. "My people are grateful," Kethver said, "but they are also afraid." "Of what?" "Of you. Of us. Of what we did together." Carter walked among the singing trees and remembered her childhood on Earth. She had grown up in the ruins of the climate wars, when humanity nearly destroyed itself fighting over water and clean air. She had learned early that sometimes the only way to save something was to be willing to destroy everything else. The Vorthak made their choice when they started killing peaceful species, she said. We just made sure they couldn't make any more choices, but now what? You have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, ships that can heal themselves and grow new weapons, technology that makes our most advanced science look like children's toys. What do you do with all that power? Carter stopped walking. The question had haunted her for months. Earth's government was already making plans. Colony ships were being built. Trade agreements were being negotiated. Patrol routes were being established. We keep the peace, she said finally. Whose peace, yours or ours? The answer hung in the air between them like poison on distant worlds. The survivors of the war were learning to live in a galaxy where humans patrolled the spaceways. The hybrid ships moved through space like mechanical angels, beautiful and terrifying. Their crews were mostly human, but some were volunteers from other species. Warriors who had looked into the abyss of total war and chosen to serve the victors. Major Greg Torres commanded one such patrol fleet. He was a veteran of the Vorthak War and had seen what happened when evil was allowed to grow unchecked. His ships carried weapons that could crack planets and crews that knew how to use them. Sir, reported his communications officer. Where? Receiving a distress call from the Rigel system. Pirates attacking the trade convoy. Torres smiled grimly. Set course for Rigel. Maximum speed. The pirates had been preying on merchant ships for months. They thought they were untouchable in the Outer Rim. They learned differently when Torres' fleet dropped out of hyperspace and demanded their surrender. Most of the pirates were smart. Enough to give up immediately. A few tried to fight. Their ships became expanding clouds of superheated gas within seconds. The galaxy was learning new lessons about law and order. Human law. Human order. Lieutenant Commander Beth Clark stood on the bridge of her hybrid cruiser and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of mapped space, the last Vorthak survivors were hiding in the darkness, waiting, planning, breeding. Let them wait, she thought. Let them plan. When they were ready to try again, humans would be ready too. Other species looked at the human ships and wondered the same thing Kethver had asked. What came next? The galaxy was safe from the Vorthak, but was it safe from its protectors? The answer to that question would determine the future of every living thing among the stars. The aliens had asked for aid against a terrible enemy. The Deathworlders had delivered devastation beyond imagination. Now they had to live with the consequences of that choice. All of them dot in the depths of space. Human colonies grew on former Vorthak worlds. Children played in the ruins of alien cities. Farmers planted crops in soil made fertile by the ashes of a dead species. The galaxy would never be the same. The question was whether that was a good thing, or the beginning of something far worse than what the Vorthak had ever planned. Only time would tell. And time, like everything else in the galaxy, now moved to the rhythm of human ambition.